And good morning to those of you in Australia, New Zealand. Good afternoon, good evening to those in Canada, the United States, Latin America. My name is Michael Haynes, and my great pleasure to welcome you to another edition of Breaking Through in B2B. Breaking Through in B2B is a live stream show dedicated for those of us that are leaders of small and medium B2B professional service firms to provide education, insights, inspiration to help us build and grow our business. Today, I'm have the great pleasure to welcome back as a repeat guest, Matt Luensmann. Matt, how are you today on your Thursday, my Friday? How are you?
I am doing great. The sun is shining. It's mid 70s in the Pacific Northwest, so I have zero complaints today, Michael.
Excellent, excellent. It is partly sunny and probably a little slightly warmer here in Sydney. But yes, a good start for the end of the week. So Matt, really looking forward to continuing our discussion. We're talking about, building teams, go-to-market teams. Today, our discussion is going to be about how to build your outsourced go-to-market team, which is something that is really relevant to a lot of our listeners, those live, those on record, listening to the recording. So just to recap, folks, for those of you who might be new, listening, watching for the first time, when we're talking about go-to-market, we're talking about your firm's overarching plan, their approach of how they're taking their company and their solutions to market. Now, sometimes folks have a tendency to think go-to-market equals marketing. Go-to-market is a lot more than just your marketing. It's about identifying the right opportunities. So what are the industries, the markets you're going to be going after? What are the kinds of clients, organizations you're going after? What are going to be those service offerings, you're offering in terms of consulting services, your service and support. And it's all about how you approach client acquisition as well as retention and expansion. Now, with our technology firms, law firms, consulting firms, there's typically a core team that will be the go-to-market, encompassing the likes of marketing, sales, service and support, often referred to as client success, your product folk, are your core functions around that go-to-market. And filling those teams of how we, fill and execute those teams is often a challenge, which is why we are having our good friend Matt here to enlighten us for us on that. So Matt, I kind of want to talk, let's kind of talk from the start of the top of the go-to-market team. So if we think of the, head of go-to-market, which is often now in many technology companies in particular, referring to as head of rev ops. What are some of the options if we're thinking of a small to mid-sized, technology firm, consulting firm, what have you, and they're looking to have someone head up, what are some of the options that we can pursue in looking to have someone really head up that whole go-to-market function? What are some of the options that they can pursue?
Yeah, so I mean, this ties in well with the last time that we talked, right, about all the different options that are available. And I think the first thing to think about is how long do you need them in the
Okay.
role that you're going to look at them for, right? So if you're just trying to get something off the ground and then you want a more permanent long-term solution as more of that sustainability,
Yeah.
somebody in a fractional outsourced contract type role is
Yeah.
probably the way to go. But if you want the person who's going to start it to continue the strategy long term, then going that FTE, that full-time permanent hire right out the gate is the best way. Now, that being said, if you're like, we need to get this off the ground yesterday, right?
Yeah.
Going that fractional contract outsource way is going to get you that person faster, meaning
Yes.
probably a couple of weeks as opposed to a couple of months. If you're looking at somebody FTE, and at that level, it also could take 4 or 5 months, right? If you're looking for
Okay.
that FTE type person, because once you get in that C-suite place, right, I have to go woo them out of where they're currently working. It's not like they're growing on trees in my backyard and I can just go pick one and they're ready to go to work for you tomorrow, right? So it ties into what we talked about last time with that pre-planning, right? Like, we can't wait until the last minute and
Right.
go, oh crap, I need Matt to pull this out of his hat tomorrow for me because I didn't plan properly and I'm in trouble now.
So that's great, Matt. So for clarification for some of our watchers who may not be familiar, when you say a fractional, so you're going to have a fractional head of go-to-market. So what does that mean? Are you talking that this person's coming on a contract basis? They're in the office, only 2 to 3 days a week. What does fractional? What does fractional mean versus a contractor? What if you can expand on that?
Yeah, so typically fractional, you're getting, anywhere from 5 to 10 to 12-ish hours out of them a week. So it would be
Okay.
less than a contractor because contractors are typically full time. They're just not getting the benefits from
Okay.
your company, right? They're not a full time employee of your company. You're having another company pay them, provide the benefits, but they're representing your company, right? But a fractional is somebody who's worked in that C-suite rev ops role before,
Yes.
right? But
Right.
they don't want to work full time permanently for one company. They'd rather support multiple at a
Okay.
time, but they can give you, whatever you determine that you need from them, right? So 5, 10, 12 hours typically is the arrangements that I see there. Anything over that 10-ish hours tends to get more into like, I need a part-time,
Okay. Okay.
CRO, right?
Okay. So
Um,
so you might need a fractional for smaller, or that you might want to get more of a part time to come in maybe 2 or 3 days a week to develop and spearhead the strategy. Then you'd be looking at a part time head of go to market, head of rev ops. Okay. So we've got fractional versus potentially a part time hiring that experienced hire for that 2 to 3 days a week. Okay. Great.
yep, absolutely. And again, you have to plan this.
Right.
You have to go into this knowing this is how many hours a week right now that I need this person.
Right.
And that
Okay.
will really determine which route you need to take to get what you ultimately need. But if
Okay.
you're like, ideally, I need a full time permanent person to do
Yes.
this, but I can't afford to wait the 3 to 4 months to get the full time person in the door. I need to get it started yesterday.
Right. Yeah.
Then this is what I need to do. So I'm
Okay.
gonna let you talk.
Okay, great. I think we've lost Matt temporarily, but he'll come back. So, folks, you've got two options. You've got your fractional or your part-time person to be that head of revenue ops, to be head of go-to-market, to be leading up to be leading the function. You can have that person in for 2 to 3 days a week. Uh, that is definitely an approach to be taking. I would suspect, Matt, given from my experience, from what I've been seeing with a lot of companies when they're really trying to get this off the ground running, having someone more on that part-time basis to help set the strategy, get some of those key initiatives, things happening, building the team in place, and getting the procedures up and running. It's likely that the part-time option sounds like something, if they don't have the budget to be able to hire a part-time person would be quite the option. Any tips with regards to fulfilling that, if we're talking at that head of role, any tips, suggestions you have with respect to if a CEO is looking to bring in someone part-time to kind of spearhead that function, any particular watch outs or tips that you have that they should be looking to do when bringing that person on board?
I mean, it all ties into the planning, right? So figuring out what skills do they absolutely have to have, right? Are you in a niche market? Are you in a niche industry, right? Do you
Yeah.
need someone that's coming out of the chemical space, the medical device space, the aerospace industry, right? Do you need that specific background and experience from them? And if so, how much of it do they need, right?
Hmm.
Or can we deal with, because all we're trying to do is get it off the ground?
Yeah.
And generally speaking, when you're talking about RevOps,
Yeah.
the basic principles are the same regardless of the vertical or the industry that you're playing in, right?
Yes.
So do I just need someone who has experience regardless of the industry to get
Yes.
the bare bones of this thing up
Yes.
while I'm doing the search for the full-time permanent person who's
Right.
got the background in the industry to fully execute it, to fully take it, to
Yeah.
where I need it to go. And what does that look like? So I think that's the primary thing. And it's what so many people miss, you know,
Yes.
hey, what do I really need this person to accomplish?
Right.
And
Yes.
what are the non-negotiable
Yes.
skills and experience that they need to have to be able to accomplish this for me? And sometimes I think companies get way too sidetracked on, well, they have to have industry experience. Okay,
Yes.
but
Right.
why?
Yes.
Especially if all you're trying to do is get it stood up, why does that fractional or part-time or contract person that you might need for a month or two while you've finished the search for the full-time person,
Yes.
why would you require them to have the experience? Because that's going to make your search more difficult.
Yeah.
It's going to make it take longer. Whereas if I can say blanketly, hey, I just need a head of RevOps, I don't care what industry they have experience in,
Mm.
you can find somebody in a couple weeks to come in and get the bare bones going
Yeah.
while you find the right person.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I can see why, because I've dealt with some of the clients I'm dealing with right now in terms of building out their go-to-market capabilities. They're thinking, okay, this person has to have the industry experience. Industry experience definitely is quite advantageous to understand the nuances of how the industry operates, how your potential clients are, how they operate, what are going to be their expectations. But certainly, though, in terms of getting the function up and running, and your whole go-to-market is about bring all of those components of revenue generators together, and working, having a plan and putting a plan in place across, your products, your service and support, your marketing, your sales, your ongoing client engagement. Having all of those, having a plan in place for all of those components, to be working together in harmony, to be bringing in new clients, and also nurturing and growing and managing current clients, so that all of those activities are going to lead to revenue generation, profitability across the firm. Having expertise across those areas is I would say on some level supersedes the industry experience, which you can often get a person up to speed on. You can leverage other knowledge within the organization. Um, Matt, I have a question from Parsa. Parsa, thank you for dialing in yet again. One of his questions are, what are some of the common mistakes do firms make when building their go-to-market teams? So you've just touched on, that industry versus skill experience and not getting too bogged down about industry experience. Are there some other mistakes that companies make when building out teams that we should be mindful of?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's all the same, right? Of not rushing it. Yes, you want to get to market, right?
Yeah.
But failing to plan is planning to fail, right?
Okay. Yeah.
So making sure that you take the time to figure out, okay, what is the scope of this role? What is the scope of this role? What is the scope of this person? And realistically, what is the timeline that I need them in place to be able to accomplish what I'm trying to accomplish, right? So if I want to add, I don't know, $1 million in 6 months from my go-to-market strategy, who do I absolutely need to start that? And who can I layer in as we go along to get there, right?
Yeah.
So figuring out what are my milestones, what are my checkpoints on my way to this goal, and at what point does this person need to be here? And then planning that backwards, right? So
Mhm.
again, planning is the key,
Yeah.
regardless of go to market or you're just growing your overall team, is when do I need this person? And
Yeah.
then move backwards from there and figure out, well, how long is it going to take me to find them?
Right.
How
Okay.
difficult is this going to be? And having that, I think, trusted recruiting and talent partner such as myself to
Yeah.
say, this is about how long this should take realistically, right?
Okay. Yeah.
Obviously there's going to be some give and take there depending upon the market that you're playing and how specific you want to be, but whoever you're working with should be able to say, hey, give me 3 months and I feel confident that we should be able to have somebody butt in seat working for you, or hey, I need two to get this done, as long as you cooperate and do what I need you to do, right? So it's having that partner that's going to handle that for you, and
Okay.
trusting, I think, their knowledge, because
Okay.
they play in that space on a daily basis, and then working that backwards. Does that make sense?
That makes sense. So it'd be fair to say, having a trusted talent partner who can help you, because also I think part of the problem is if you don't have someone like yourself who is specializing in talent acquisition recruitment, or someone like myself who specializes in go-to-market strategy, development and execution, and knows what are the capabilities that need to be in. Having a talent advisor such as yourself who can help advise as to, well, what's often done within the industry, what are the roles, and helping to provide advice as to what those roles need to entail, the skill sets, experience necessary, can be quite helpful. That's great, Matt. I'd like to move on. So we've talked about the head of go to market, and some of the different approaches. I'd like to move on to. I'm going to actually move on to sales as opposed to marketing. Sales seems to be an area that has been, in my experience over the past, particularly the past 12 months, in terms of as part of building out go-to-market capabilities, sales has been an area that has been the bane of many CEOs' existence. Um, so in terms of sales in the context of helping companies to achieve their whole go-to-market around market entry, acquiring new clients, establishing presence. Again, can you give some advice as to what are some of the approaches to building out that head of that sales arm within the whole go-to-market? What are some of the different options? Because that seems to be a real sticking point and frustration um, with a number of CEOs I've been speaking to as part of their whole business development of their firms.
Yeah, I mean, I would echo my exact answer that I gave for the RevOps is, how fast do we need to stand it up? What's the background that they need to have, right? Do we need industry experience as far as their background, right? Again, are we selling a niche product, right? What do you need them to do, right? Like, are we trying to build the sales team completely from scratch, or are we starting a new unit that's going to do something different than our current salespeople, right? Because if we're just trying to tweak what we're doing to change the approach to get to market faster, as opposed to what our normal salespeople are doing, right? Whatever that may be, then that's
Mhm.
going to dictate who you need and what arrangement that you can have. I mean, there's the fractional, outsourced, whatever word you want to use, the VPs of sales, right? I mean, those
Yes.
guys are falling off trees. You can't, as my dad would say, you can't swing a stick without hitting one of these guys. Like, they're just
Right.
everywhere, right? So if all you need is somebody that's been at a VP level of sales to help build out a process, structure a process, and get the thing rolling, like, you could have one of them guys in a week.
Right.
So again, it just really depends what is the scope of what you need them to accomplish and how fast you need it done. Like, if you don't want somebody to just start it and then hand it off,
Yes.
right? Because sometimes that may be what they're running into, is they don't want to have to pass the baton, right? Because
Yes.
they fear that they're going to lose the continuity of, hey, this guy started it, but then this guy came in and looked at it and said, well, that's not what I would have done.
Right.
And then he changed it, right? So figuring out, like, can we, start with a fractional or a part-time, and then get the full-time person in before the fractional leaves and get them on the same page,
Yes.
right? So that we don't lose that continuity. I mean, that would seem to be the winning strategy for me if I was looking at this, and I was worried about the continuity, right?
Right.
Because if I'm bringing in a head and I'm saying, hey, look, this guy started it and I want you to just finish it,
Mm.
but I don't really want you to put your touch on it, right?
Right.
Like, that's going to be for most of these guys, it's going to be a little bit of a tough sell, right? Because they have a little bit of an ego. They've done this. They're like, I want to put my fingerprint on this thing.
Yeah. So, okay, and kind of just continuing on in that direction. If I think about some of the clients I'm working with, some CEOs I've been dealing with, they're looking for someone to spearhead that function. In some cases, to rebuild it and retweak it, because part of the problem is some of the previous BDMs have been using very antiquated approaches that are not working and are not bringing in any revenue. They're not establishing the relationships that need to be established within these markets at the right level. So they're looking for someone to come in and spearhead the function and build the team, and getting people and getting the sales team operating in the right way, which means working cross-functionally, working in conjunction with marketing, with the rest of the go-to-market team. So I guess my question to you is how does a CEO go about doing so? Because this seems to be quite a problem where they either don't know they can't find the right, either they have someone that's wrong in the role, so that yes, they have experience, but they're just not working because they're not evolving with the times in terms of how our clients buy, and they're looking for people to establish relationships and be far more strategic, as opposed to we're just going to do the show up and throw up with a pitch. So how can CEOs go about, what are some approaches that they can go about, even if they go through a partner like yourself, and you bring them some candidates, any suggestions about how they go about vetting to make sure that they've got the right kind of person to lead that sales function, that is going to be strategic, that is going to be collaborative, that's going to help them establish the relationships and gain the market visibility and the things that they need to do to ultimately gain clients, but build and grow those clients as well. I know that's pretty loaded, but that's a feedback that I'm getting from a number of CEOs who I'm dealing with, who are quite frustrated of getting sales folks who are doing very antiquated methods. Great CVs, but when they hit the ground running, they're just not cutting it, particularly when it comes to going into new markets and or verticals where they don't have their buddies that they can call upon, and CEOs are looking to do big things with market opportunities that they've identified.
Yeah, I mean, I think you halfway answered your question with your question, right? Because the first thing that I would look at is, okay, so I've got this guy, but he's missing these 3 things that I want, right? So identify those 3 things as an example. That the guy that you have, right? So we're using antiquated methods, we're using antiquated technologies, and we don't know how to break into new markets, right? Without having a buddy to call, we don't know how to break into new markets. Okay, so go find a younger guy is most likely going to be the first answer to that question, right? I hate to bring age into it, right? But we are, for better or worse, we're creatures of habit, right? So if what they've been doing is working, they're going to keep doing it, right? So if we want somebody that's going to do something different, we might have to say, okay, well, I can live with a little bit less experience.
Yes.
Because they're not going to be in the same vein as the guy that I've got now, right? So I don't like, and I hate saying that, because we need to learn everything we can from our elders, because they have so much wisdom that if we don't get it from them, we might lose it, right? So I don't want to say don't do that, but in this particular scenario, if we're using outdated technology and antiquated methods or old methods, then we need to switch our window of who we're looking at, right? So maybe narrow your experience level from 30 to 15 years, right? As an example, right? And then it's really asking the questions, because one of the things that you may or may not see on a resume when we're talking about breaking into new markets is they might not put that on their resume. So that's going to have to be something that screams out in the job description. You have to have this. You have to be able to speak to it. You have to tell me how recent it was. You have to tell me how you did it. Like, what was the methodology that you used behind it, and what were the results of it, right? And that's something that as your talent partner, we can start the screen process on that for you.
Okay.
And then
Yeah.
say, hey, I asked these questions. And sometimes this is one of those things that I'll say to my client, hey, so what question or questions should I ask the candidates that will immediately tell you if they're pointed in the right direction for the person that you're looking for, right? And so I will ask that on the front end, and you then say to me very quickly, without wasting more than 5 minutes of your time, no, that's not the right answer, right?
Okay.
That's not who I'm looking for. I need somebody who's done this, right?
Yeah.
But it's getting very clear on what do I need. And
Yeah.
number two, because the tough thing with salespeople is they're going to sell you in an interview, right? Like that's what they do for a living is
Mm,
sell a
mm,
product or a service. And if they're in an interview, they're selling themselves. So they
yeah.
know what you want to hear. So your challenge is, did they just tell me what I wanted to hear, or did they tell me something that I know that they've done because of the way that they spoke about this example or this experience, right? So being very clear on when I ask this question to this candidate,
Yeah.
these are the range of acceptable answers that tells me that this person has the skill, right? That they've got this experience, right? So it's the same thing when we talk about like core competency questions, right? So
Yeah.
if we're looking for a growth mindset, hey, tell me about a time that you failed and what did you learn from it?
Yeah. Yeah.
Right? Well, hey, I broke into the candy jar as a kid and my mom slapped my hand so I didn't do it again. Okay, that doesn't apply to work. Like good
Right.
example, but it's not relevant to what I'm trying to suss out by asking you that question, right? So in that vein of like, okay, well, I broke into 5 new markets in 6 months, I sold 10 new clients and I brought in $1 million. Okay, tell me more about how you did that, right? And really get into that nitty gritty, because the more questions you ask and the more details that you try to pull out of them, if they're making it up as they go along, it's going to start to fall apart.
Right. So Matt, I think you've raised a number of valuable things here. One, you've talked about the importance of being very clear on what it is you need, what you're looking for in the role, in terms of what they're going to be needing to do, what sorts of experiences, backgrounds. I think the point that you've made about knowing, in case of where you've had prior hires that haven't succeeded, knowing what are the gaps and where they have failed and have not succeeded and what was missing. So taking a bit of that audit, that review from that standpoint as well. So not just looking at what do we need moving forward, where have previous folks gone wrong? And then I think your third, if I summarize it up, the power of asking very detailed, those nitty gritty questions where you want to get a lot of examples of previous accomplishments, previous scenarios. Talk me through what you achieved, how did you achieve about doing so, and getting into the nitty gritty details of some of those experiences. Is quite important. And then again, working with a talent partner such as yourself, where you can say, this is what I'm looking for, this is where things have gone wrong and where they've messed up. Therefore, these are the kinds of things that I'm looking for. You can help, that will help in your search to help them source the right fractional, the right part-time, the right full-timer, and that will help in terms of framing and putting together those nitty-gritty questions to be able to really vet out potential candidates. Fantastic.
Hang on 1 second for me. I'm sorry.
That's great. Folks, if you have any other questions, please put them in the comments. Okay, well, we're getting up to that 30-minute mark before we wrap up. So Matt, any final suggestions, do's or don'ts with respect to when leaders are trying to build out and building out the capabilities, building out their teams for their outsourced and eventually their full-time go-to-market teams around marketing, sales, service support. Any final do's, don'ts, watch outs for our viewers, for our listeners?
Yeah, absolutely. This is what I was thinking just a minute ago is, think about when you're planning out who you need to hire, whether it's for your go-to-market team or any other position, think about the planning that you do for that similar to the planning that you do for your business, right?
Okay.
So if you have a clear picture of what you want and how you're going to get there, you're
Yeah.
more likely to get it than if you go, well, I have this kind of blurry plan, this kind of blurry vision. I have some rough idea of how I might get there. Well,
Yeah.
that's going to dictate the kind of results that you're going to get, right? The same thing is true when it comes to hiring the right person. Well, do I have a crystal clear picture of number one, who I need, but number two, how am I going to determine that this person actually has the skills, experience, and background that I need them to have? What questions am I going to ask? What answers are acceptable? And
Yeah.
what answers aren't acceptable,
Yeah.
right? So again, that planning piece is of the utmost importance
And I
because
think Matt, to jump in, I think what you've just said is the planning is the most important, but I think you highlighted it goes back to having a clear plan of ultimately where you're taking your business. So it all kind of feeds together. What is the roadmap? What is the plan for your business strategy, which, inherently your go to market? What is the plan that you're ultimately trying to achieve? From that should then help start to clarify who you need, what you need them to do, what examples, experiences, and also from any prior experiences, what is not acceptable, what gaps, shortcomings must be overcome when we're trying to build out the capabilities to execute on those business goals, on those business strategies. So that's fantastic.
yep, 100% plan and
Excellent.
you will be successful.
Excellent. Well, Matt, this has been another great, insightful, valuable discussion with you. For those folks that want to get to know more about you, how you can assist them in terms of building out the capabilities and teams, how can people connect to you, reach you, find you, Matt?
Yeah, so my email address is matt at mjl, R is in recruiting, the word and, C is in consulting.com.
Yeah.
Website is obviously the end of that. And you can find me on LinkedIn. And once we hop off, I will also put my information in the comments to make it super easy for those who listen after the live recording is done.
Awesome. And I will definitely be adding those contact details into the YouTube notes as well. Matt, thank you again. For those listening live, those watching the recording, thank you again for coming into another edition of Breaking Thru in B2B. And until next time, take care and bye for now. Thank you.